you a human being, a human doing, or a human becoming? When we embrace awareness and intentionality, we can become the person we want to be. In today's episode of the Leadership Project, I'll share my personal reflections from the amazing interview with Irene Riad, which led me to rediscover and dive deeper into Jungian psychology about our true self, about our ego, about our identity, about the persona that we project on the world and how we let our shadow impact the way that we show up. The discussion with Irene really made me stop and reflect and rethink a few things about the way I do show up, and I'm looking forward to sharing those thoughts with you today. Hey, and welcome back to the Leadership Project. I'm your host, Mick Spiers, and today we're taking a deep dive into the themes that surfaced in my conversation with Irene Riad. In that conversation, Irene shared some profound insights on the importance of self-awareness, authenticity, and resilience in leadership. She emphasized that understanding who we are at our core isn't just a personal journey. It's foundational to how we lead, how we connect, and how we inspire those around us. Reflecting on our discussion, it really reminded me and made me go deeper back into the work of Carl Jung, the renowned psychologist who spent his life exploring the depths of the human mind. Today, we're going to explore what Jung referred to as the self and its interconnected aspects, the ego, the persona, and the shadow. These concepts aren't just theoretical ideas. They give us powerful tools to understand ourselves more fully and to lead others with integrity and authenticity. So, without any further ado, let's get into it. To start, let's revisit a few key insights from my discussion with Irene Riad. Irene spoke passionately about how essential it is for leaders to embrace authenticity. She described authenticity as knowing and accepting oneself with all your strengths and all your vulnerabilities. This acceptance, she said, enables leaders to build genuine relationships and foster an environment of trust. Irene also touched on resilience, describing it as the ability to remain grounded and composed amid challenges. For her, resilience isn't about suppressing difficulties, but facing them head on and allowing ourselves to grow from them. This reminded me of how often in leadership we might feel compelled to show only our strongest, most unshakable side. But Irene challenged us to rethink that, to consider resilience as a balance between strength and vulnerability, a willingness to learn and evolve. There's also another crucial insight that emerged from Irene's approach, one that Nietzsche once described as the power of the pause. According to Nietzsche, the power between stimulus and response is where freedom lives. This pause is the space in which we can choose how we're going to respond rather than just react automatically. And it's in this space that we gain the freedom to act with intention and authenticity. Far too often we react to situations on autopilot, responding in ways we think others expect. So we're actually responding in what the way that we think society expects us to respond, or the way that we think the other person will expect us to respond, or a subconscious thought of what will they think of me. But by pausing, by truly processing the situation, we allow ourselves to be genuine, to bring forth a response that reflects who we are, not just a reaction conditioned by external expectations. These insights led me to reflect on Jung's idea of the self and the various elements that make up our identity and influence our behaviour. At the centre of Jung's work is the concept of individuation, the lifelong process of becoming whole by integrating all parts of our psyche. Let's walk through some of these concepts together, and I'll show you how they shape us as individuals and as leaders. So first of all, let's talk about the ego, our conscious identity. Ego is not a dirty word. It's literally just our sense of self. Jung described the ego as the conscious mind, the I with which we identify in daily life. It's the part of us that navigates the world, makes decisions and forms opinions. The ego helps us establish that sense of self, yet it also allows us to set boundaries, creating distinctions between what we accept and what we reject within ourselves. In leadership, our ego plays a significant role. It's often the voice of confidence that pushes us forward and helps us to assert our ideas. However, Irene's discussion reminded me that while confidence is essential, unchecked ego can lead to blind spots. When we're overly identified with our ego, we might miss the perspective of others, or we avoid feedback that challenges our sense of self, our identity, our feeling about ourselves. This is where the delicate dance of leadership comes in, balancing both confidence with openness to growth and challenge. In Irene's words, true leadership requires humility and the courage to see ourselves honestly. This humility allows us to question our assumptions and adjust our approach to better serve our teams and organizations. Beyond that, the humility brings trust. When you're honest about who you are, your strengths and your weaknesses, and if that is an accurate reflection of your strengths and weaknesses, it builds trust in others because they see you and go, oh, okay, at least this person has got self-awareness of what they're good at and what they're not good at. The humility to admit mistakes relaxes people to go, oh, okay, this is a human being that's in front of me. And it gives them the license that they too can be humble, that they too can own their strengths, own their weaknesses, and admit to any shortcomings, including mistakes or failures. That's the kind of environment and culture that we want in our workplaces. The second part is the persona, the mask we present to the world. Jung spoke about the persona as the mask or role that we present to others. This is shaped by societal expectations and the roles we play, such as leader, parent, friend, bad golfer, whatever you want to add in there. Your persona helps you to adapt and interact with the world effectively. But if we become too attached to it, we risk losing touch with our true selves. In our conversation, Irene highlighted the importance of authenticity, which means looking beyond the persona. She noted that leaders often feel pressure to maintain a certain image, whether it's an image of strength, one of decisiveness, or even an air of infallibility. But Irene encouraged us to go beyond these external roles, to consider who we are at our core. When we lead from a place of authenticity, she said, we give others permission to do the same. In a practical sense, this means allowing room for vulnerability and honesty. As leaders, showing that we don't have all the answers can be empowering for those around us. It builds a culture of trust and shared learning where people feel safe to bring their whole selves to the table. It also creates space for diversity of thought. Just admit that you don't have all the answers. It will create the space for others to come forward with their ideas. It'll create ownership. It'll create a feeling of accountability from others where they want to be part of the solution and to be on the journey with you. So we need to be really careful with this concept of the persona and the identity that we're projecting on the world, that it doesn't become some kind of self-fulfilling prophecy that doesn't match who we truly are. There is an incredible power in the story that we tell ourselves about ourselves in our own mind and the story that we project on the world about who we are. We then build an expectation that we're always going to behave in that certain way. So if we've told ourselves a story that is, I'm the kind of person who never and then we finish that story, we've painted ourselves into a corner that we'll never do that, or we'll be questioning our own identity in the world and our own persona. So it is powerful, and we can create that story in the right way. I'm the kind of person who takes time to deeply listen and care for other human beings. That's a powerful persona. But if it's I'm the kind of person who never has a drink of alcohol on a Friday night, well, you've just created a persona. Does that match who you really are, or does it not match who you are? But what you're doing is you're creating this persona that then you have to live up to. So let's be careful with our persona. Let's be careful with the person that we present to the world, that it does match who we truly are and who we truly want to become. The next part in Jung's fascinating world is the shadow. The shadow represents the parts of ourselves that we might hide, deny, or even be unaware of. Traits and desires that don't align with our conscious self-image. For many of us, the shadows can be difficult to confront. It might include qualities we've been taught to suppress, like anger, jealousy, or fear. But Jung believed that ignoring the shadow only leads to inner conflict and hinders our growth. Instead, by acknowledging and accepting these hidden aspects, we can gain a fuller understanding of ourselves. Irene spoke to this in our conversation when she discussed resilience as embracing our whole selves, not just the good parts. She challenged us to see resilience as the ability to look at ourselves honestly, without judgment, and use that self-awareness to grow. For leaders, this means understanding that our so-called weaknesses can be just as valuable as our strengths. By accepting our shadow, we develop empathy, patience, and a greater capacity to connect with others. Imagine leading a team where people feel seen and valued, not just for their achievements, but for who they truly are. Embracing the shadow allows us to foster a workplace where people feel safe to take risks, to make mistakes, and grow without fear of judgment. So we ignore our shadow at our peril. If we ignore it, it's going to come back to bite us. If we embrace our shadow, we can turn it into something that is very valuable as a leader and in the workplace. So how do we bring all these elements together? Our ego, our persona, our shadow, to help us move towards what Jung called the self, our truest and most integrated identity. This self is neither solely our ego nor our persona, but a harmonious blend of all aspects of our being. Individuation, the journey of integrating these parts, isn't a one-time task. It's a lifelong process of self-discovery and growth. I'm 51 years old and I still learn something about myself every single day. In leadership, this process helps us become more authentic. Irene's insights on authenticity resonate deeply here because ultimately, authenticity is about knowing and embracing our full selves, even the parts that are hard to look at. Leaders who operate from this place of wholeness inspire trust, encourage openness, and create environments where everyone feels empowered to bring their best selves forward. For everyone listening today, I encourage you to reflect on these questions. What parts of myself do I often hide or deny? How does my persona align or conflict with my true self? The person that I project on the world, does it match who I truly am, or am I projecting a person that is more related to my perceptions of social conditioning and social expectations? How might acknowledging my shadow make me more compassionate, more understanding, more empathetic as a leader? And perhaps more importantly, how can we practice the power of the pause to create intentional, genuine responses rather than reactions conditioned by habit or expectation? Irene spoke about 6 seconds. That pause between stimulus and response to process, and 6 seconds is not a lot of time, to process, to make sure that our response is aligned with our true self, and we pick a response that is going to serve yourself, your team, your organization best at that moment. Not just some reaction that is on autopilot, that is really subject to the conditioning of what you think other people expect you to do in this time. I catch myself in this all the time. I'm going to be very vulnerable here. When my wife asks me questions, I'm often thinking about what does she want to hear instead of what I want to say. This is a problem. And this is a problem I'm committing myself to address. If I walk around only giving answers that I think match what the other person wants to hear, I'm not being my true self, and I'm not sharing myself fully and vulnerably, and I'm going to fix that. That's my big takeaway from the discussion with Irene, to use this 6 seconds the right way, not to be thinking about what do they expect of me right now, but what would I do, the person that I am, the person that I want to become, what would that person do? How would they respond to this situation, and what response is going to serve me and the other people around me the best in this situation? So reflecting on Jung's idea of the ego, the persona, the shadow, and the self offers us a roadmap for understanding ourselves more deeply. It's a journey of self-acceptance, humility, and ultimately authenticity. As Irene reminded us, leadership is all about being real with ourselves and being real with others, about facing challenges with resilience and integrity. So that's it for today's episode. In the next episode, I'll be joined by Christian Muntean of Vantage Consulting, and he'll be talking about training to lead and embracing the many facets of Olympic athletes into how we might train for our leadership. If you're getting great value from our content, we would love it if you would leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts or your preferred podcast service. You can also subscribe to the Leadership Project YouTube channel, where we bring you weekly video podcasts, curated videos, and our live stream show. All designed to help you become the leader that you wish you always had. Thank you for listening to the Leadership Project at mickspiers.com. A huge call out to Faris Sadek for his video editing of all of our video content, and to all of the team at TLP. Joanne Goes On, Gerald Calabo, and my amazing wife, Spiers. I could not do this show without you. Don't forget to subscribe to the Leadership Project YouTube channel, where we bring you interesting videos each and every week. And you can follow us on social, particularly on LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram. Now, in the meantime, please do take care, look out for each other, and join us on this journey as we learn together and lead together.